Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shreya if you're new here. Today we are going to be talking about the 10 best books of the year so far because I checked my calendar and realized we're already halfway through 2024, which is terrifying because I had a list of things I wanted to achieve and accomplish, and I thought, wow, 12 months, all the time in the world, and now we're already halfway through the year. I have read 83 books this year, which might sound like an accomplishment, but I wanted to read 100 books this year and I wanted to tone it down from last year because I wanted to actually have a life, but here we are, and I'm almost at my reading goal. The books that I'm going to be talking about today, I highly 10 out of 10 recommend, and most of them are 5 stars, but I do have a couple on the list that aren't 5 stars. I even have a 3-star book, and I'll explain later why I had to make this list. So, without further ado, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get started. The first book that we're going to be talking about is actually 2 books, and it had changed my life, and it is contending for the top series of all time for me, and that is the Boys of Tommen series, specifically Binding and Keeping 13. Even though the rest of the books did have 5 and 4-star ratings, these 2 are the ones that I always come back to, and they just make me weep. If you don't know anything about this series, the first 2 books follow Johnny and Shannon. This takes place in Ireland, and Shannon's getting bullied a lot, so she has to change schools. When she goes into this new school, she automatically comes in contact with Johnny, who is the hot rugby player, and she's kind of awkward. She's gotten bullied a lot, and there's a lot of personal trauma that we see the characters go through, and it is classified as a YA romance, but I don't agree with that at all. I don't think I would have been ready to read these when I was 16, 17 even, and so I would highly recommend to look up trigger warnings before you decide to read this book. But these books are absolutely massive, and the text is so small, but it's 100% worth it. It honestly kept me away for a couple of years, and I'm so upset about that because these books are phenomenal. They are funny, they are heartwarming. Just the way that they love each other is so sweet and amazing. See how these characters are dealing with such hard times, but they choose to love each other well, and I think we can learn a lot from them. The trauma is really hard to read about, especially in the 3rd and the 4th books, which follows Shannon's brother and his love interest, but I highly recommend going through this journey if you read the trigger warnings and decide to go through with it. I don't think you'll regret it, and the friend group, the found family, it's just so good. So if you really like the Addicted series, I think you'll really like this book. It just gives me everything. It's so long, but every single sentence and page I'm just like glued in. So I could have read a book that would double the size just following the character doing mundane tasks. That's how fleshed out Chloe Walsh made the characters. They're just absolutely amazing. I honestly think this might be the best thing I discovered this year so far, the best books ever, and I am in love with them. If you haven't read or heard about the series, just pause this video and go buy them right now. You won't regret it, I promise. These are amazing. Okay, number 2 that I have to talk about is Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. This is actually the 3rd and final Magnolia Parks book in the Magnolia Parks series, so there's still going to be 2 more Daisy Hates books in this universe, but this is the last one that's following Magnolia and BJ. What can I say about this book? I'm going to take you back to the beginning of the series because this is the last book. Obviously so much happens that I can't talk about because it will be a spoiler. So Magnolia Parks follows 2 couples, but this book specifically follows Magnolia and BJ. They have a very tumultuous relationship. Every single time something goes well, something happens that sets them back, and it happens like that for 2 books straight, and it's super frustrating. Jessa Hastings is a goddess because just her writing about the character just walking down the street is so interesting to me, and it's so beautiful and lyrical, and I actually have a full reading vlog, I'll link it down below, of me reading this book and reacting to it. Kind of embarrassing, I think I sobbed in that, but this book, 10 out of 10, it was so good, and I still think about it and go back to this book and read quotes and their text messages in it, and I just love that. It's just so fun. But Magnolia and BJ have a very tumultuous relationship. They're just very immature, very privileged individuals, and this one deals with grief a lot, so it makes you feel for the characters more than you did in the first couple of books. And if you are a Magnolia Parks fan and you haven't read this yet, please run and go read the rest of the series. I put so many of my friends on this series this year and they have all thanked me. I think a lot of people steer clear of this whole series because the first book has a trope that a lot of people hate, and most people decide not to read the series because of the trope. And I think that even if you hate the trope and you think that you're not gonna like the series, you have to give it a shot because it's unlike any other depiction of the trope that I've seen before. It's just so entertaining, and just hating can do no wrong. I love this book. Hands down, one of the best I've read this year. Okay, next I have two romances. The first one is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This book really, really blew me away. I loved Part of Your World and I loved Yours Truly. I don't remember if I gave those 5 stars, but I do remember I really, really liked those. I bought this book mainly because of the cover. Like, look at how gorgeous and beautiful, and it really took me aback. This is about Justin and Emma, and they find each other through a Reddit thread because they have a curse on them where they date someone, they break up, and then that person ends up finding their soulmate. So they find each other and they're like, wait, theoretically, if we date each other, then the next person we date after should be our soulmate, obviously. And they end up falling in love, but it is filled with acts of service, and acts of service is my love language, and it just really spoke to me. Just the things that they would do for each other, really, I was like smiling and kicking my feet and all of that. Let me just say, there's a scene in this book where she gets sick and he does everything he can to get to her, and it's not like, oh, driving to her house. She's staying in a place in the middle of this lake and you have to take a little boat out to get to her, and he like fights his way through her in this very crazy storm because even though she just has a cold, he just wants to get to her and give her soup and make her feel better. And that scene sticks with me because I'm like, if he wanted to, he would, because of this book. I literally love this book. The character development is so good. It's so funny. And I just think that Abby Jimenez can do no wrong. She does a really good job of depicting real problems and real issues in relationships. She did that really wonderfully with Anxiety and Yours Truly. And I think that she just knocked this one out of the park. This is part of the Part of Your World series, trilogy. I don't know if there's going to be more books, but if you have read Part of Your World and Yours Truly, it will really pay off because there are some connections in this book that will blow your mind. One of the reasons why this was a standout for me this year is because yes, it is a romance. Yes, it's focusing on a romance that's so wonderful and great and depicting real problems, but it also focuses on other relationships in their lives and really fleshes those out in a way that's so wonderful and feels so full. It's just amazing. I think this might actually be my favorite romance that I've read this year. Okay, and the next romance and the last physical copy that I have to show you guys is a recent read of mine, and that is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I actually did read this in a reading vlog that I'll also link down below. This book blew me away. I love Every Summer After. My unpopular opinion is that that book is better than Love in Other Words. Please don't hate me for that. So I gave that one 5 stars, and then her second one, Meet Me at the Lake, I was disappointed by. So I read this one. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it, and it continued to blow me away. So this book follows Lucy and Felix, and Lucy goes to Prince Edward Island to meet up with her bestie and spend time with her and her family. But the one rule is that she cannot fall in love with her brother. So obviously she falls in love with her brother, and her best friend Bridget, who is Felix's brother, is getting married in the present tense, but she flees to Prince Edward Island, and we're trying to figure out why she's doing that. If she's going back on the wedding, but also at the same time she's falling in love with Felix, and we get to see the backstory of their summers together. And the setting of this book is absolutely magnificent, gorgeous. I must get out to Prince Edward Island. I love Carly Fortune's writing. Something about it just really clicks for me. I wanted everything. This book gave me everything that I wanted. Whenever we switched tenses, it was when I was thinking as a reader, oh my gosh, I want to know the backstory. And then boom, bam, we got it. She didn't make us wait. The descriptions are good. The reason why Bridget fled to the island, I thought that was really, really well done, and it just satisfied me. It was amazing. I loved this book, and it was fun funny, full of personality, and I just think that this is one of the most well done romances of the year. Funny Story did not make this list. I read Funny Story in the video that I read this in. Check it out if you want more in-depth reactions and thoughts on this book, but I just thought that this was absolutely amazing. Really, really, really well done. Okay, next I read all volumes of Heartstopper that was out this year, and I was taken aback by how much I loved it and how heartwarming it is. I gave all of those books 5 stars. I didn't finish the series on Netflix. I'm not good at watching things, but it was really cute. This is such a standout for me. I'm so glad I discovered it this year. This book is about 2 boys, Charlie and Nick, and they are very different in terms of the activities that they do in school and who they hang out with, but they are gravitating towards each other, and they're dealing with how to like each other and how to be together, and it's just so innocent and heartwarming, yet these volumes tackle issues that are really hard to deal with, but a lot of people deal with at that age, and I think that this is just so well done, and everybody should read these. The thing that makes me love this even more is just the depictions of innocent love. They genuinely care for each other so much that you can see that the decisions that they are making really come out of love and for putting the other person first, and I think that it's just so wholesome and so cute, and I highly recommend Heartstopper. I think it is one of the most gorgeous stories ever, and I'm so sad that there's only 1 more volume. It is a graphic novel, and I think that a lot of people can be turned off by that, but please read it. I think it's for everyone, and it just, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's so sweet and heartwarming and just everything good. One of the best of the year for sure. Okay, next we have something that's a little bit more serious, and that is the Green Bone Saga. So it starts with Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy. So it is a trilogy. These books might be intimidating because they are long and they are intense fantasy books. I'm going to try my best to describe this in a way that makes sense. I think that you should go in kind of blind and just read it, because that's what I did, and I had the most amazing, phenomenal reading experience, cried multiple times, and I can't stop thinking about this world ever, and I already want to do a reread. So I would describe this as an urban fantasy. There are 2 major clans, and I like to think of them as gangs that are ruling the city. They are doing intense gang things like taking over, killing people, and in this world, Jade is the power source. It's really comparable to a drug. You take this hard drug, basically, that only certain people can really handle without dying, and once you take the drug, which is Jade, you get really powerful and can do a ton of really cool things. These clans are trying to control the Jade and use the Jade to control the city and to control all of the members in the clan. The timeline in this book is crazy. It follows a vast amount of years, a vast amount of characters, a vast amount of POVs, and sometimes you don't understand why you're following people, but it always comes back in the most epic way, and the payoff is phenomenal. It's so good. Things that I never saw coming, and honestly, like, one of the best series of all time, and it's so underrated. I wish more people would read it. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed, but I think once you make it through the first book, you're good to go, and it's not that hard to understand once you like sit down with it. All the names of people and places are a little bit hard to categorize, and I think that might be why a lot of people kind of give up on this series, but it is absolutely amazing. I'm trying to get like my friends to read it. Nobody that I know have read it. It's so good. Fonda Lee is just a genius. I don't know how she did it. If you like Game of Thrones, you're gonna love this series. It was just amazing, and so many highs, so many lows, so many tears, so many laughs, and it just ended perfectly. Okay, the next book is actually one that I gave 3 stars, but ever since I read it, I can't stop thinking about it, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. It is a science fiction book, and this book is about an astronaut, and when he wakes up in space, he doesn't remember anything, but everybody on the ship is dead, and there's a lot of science lingo, and he meets someone in his journey, and I don't want to give it away, but it is such an interesting book. If you like science fiction, you will love this book. I think the reason why I give it 3 stars is because there's a lot of science lingo. A lot of science lingo that I just didn't understand. It kind of went above my head. But the relationship in this book is just phenomenal. If you like aliens, you're gonna love this book. I have to put it on this list. I think I'm gonna do a reread sometime soon and probably up my star rating because I just haven't been able to stop thinking about this. I think I read this back in January. It's so good because he's remembering what happened to him and why he lost his memories, and that is a crazy story. But it's also so good because you're put in this situation that's such high stakes, and it makes the relationship even more heartwarming. So definitely read this book. It's phenomenal. Okay, the next book, I actually gave this one 4 stars, but I have to have it on the list because it was just such a surprise by how good it was and how much I ate this book up, and that is Ruthless Vows. This is the 2nd installment in the Letters of Enchantment duology, with Divine Rivals being number 1. Now, if you followed me last year, I hated Divine Rivals. I gave it 2 stars. I think that book was not good at all. Like, I don't understand the hype. I don't understand why everybody was really loving that book. I checked out Ruthless Vows from the library because I was like, okay, I'll read 1 chapter, DNF it, turn it back in. No, I ate it up. It honestly would have been 5 stars if I liked Divine Rivals more because it was amazing. I have no notes. I know a lot of people wish that it focused on the romance more. I loved it because it was action happening in this war, and it was just so good. The writing clicked, everything clicked, and I wasn't bored at all, and it was just so good. It was so good, and I just can't believe I loved it so much because I gave Divine Rivals 2 stars. The next book is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. I read this book a couple months ago and it has stayed on my heart ever since. This book is about Salama, and she worked at a hospital in Syria where war has erupted. She has nobody in her life. Her parents and her sibling died, and she is trying to live in these really hard times. She lives with her sister-in-law, and they are just going through such a hard time. She's having serious, terrifying visions, and it's just something that most of us could never even imagine having to go through. Throughout this book, she's struggling between having freedom for herself and trying to get out of Syria, or staying in Syria and helping the people that need her in this hospital, and it's heartbreaking and just really hard to read about. But also this particular story, it's just so hopeful and enlightening, and I think everybody should read it. I was surprised by several things in this book. It wasn't predictable. I really liked how things ended up in this book, and I overall think that this book was amazing and perfect. I remember finishing it at work and I had to lock myself in the bathroom and sob for 20 minutes. And this book is really universal. Anybody can read it and should read it. Okay, the last book that I'm going to talk about in today's video is actually a classic. I have a whole video of me reading this book, so go check it out down below. It is The Picture of Dorian Gray. I read this book because I wanted to see if I was too stupid to understand it. I read it without book notes. Read a classic for fun, and it was amazing. It was so good. I think about it all the time. Like, I'm constantly like talking to my friends and my family, and I'll like bring things up from this book and bring up life lessons from this book. The Picture of Dorian Gray, I feel like everybody knows what it's about. It's about a man who sells his soul for eternal youth and beauty. And the book is really short. It is really easy to digest and to understand if you take it slowly. And it's just so interesting how a book that was written so long ago can hit the mark so heavily even now. If you're looking for a classic and you don't know where to start, this is where you start. It's genuinely good and really holds up even today. And I had such a fun time reading it. If you want more in-depth thoughts, want to see me read it, click down below. Alright guys, I'm sure this video was way longer than anybody thought it was going to be, so I'm going to go ahead and go now. I hope you loved this video. Please let me know some of your favorite books down below. I feel like I need more recommendations. I want to read more amazing books this year. It will be very interesting to check at the end of the year and see if these hold up to what my favorites will be then. Alright, I love you guys a lot, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.